Hello there, my name is Cassidy Cash, that's Shakespeare Girl. Welcome to this week's episode on the YouTube channel. We're starting a new playlist this week all about Elizabethan games. We're going to call the playlist Shakespeare's Games because all of the games we're going to look at are either featured in Shakespeare's plays or they were played by Shakespeare's contemporaries during his lifetime as a popular source of entertainment from 1564 to 1616. So today we're kicking things off by taking a look at the game of chess, which during William Shakespeare's lifetime was called the Philosopher's Game. So first of all, let's look at how this game shows up in Shakespeare's plays. Now, I'm unclear about whether the Philosopher's Game is a variety of chess that was popular during Shakespeare's lifetime, or if the Philosopher's Game is basically England's version of chess during this time period. But from 1550 to 1700, the Philosopher Game was very, very popular. I found several historical references online concerning the history of chess that really want you to know that from about 1450 is when the queen in the game of chess took on a role of strength. And that was not the case when the game was invented. So versions of chess prior to 1450, the queen was actually a weak player in the game of chess. And while there was not a consensus around what historical event took place to switch the role of the queen in the game, there was a consensus that something happened and this switched the role of the queen in chess. And from about 1450 until modern times, the general rules of chess have not changed that much. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, how in the world is it possible that there was not another way to play chess? And then I got looking into the history of chess and discovered the Philosopher's Game. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. But know that there is a massive history of the game of chess, and I'm only going to show you the one little sliver I know for sure existed in England during William Shakespeare's lifetime, and that's called the Philosopher's Game. Now, where I found this was instructions for the Philosopher's Game were published in 1568, according to H.J.R. Murray's History of Chess book. There is also a publication called the Publisher's Circular from 1907 that lists a book by William Fulk that is specifically about instructions for how to play the Philosopher's Game, and they date Fulk's book to a publication of 1563. So sometime right around when William Shakespeare was born, or until he was about 4 years old, was when this got published as a game in England. And it would seem from studying Shakespeare that the bard thought of chess as the Philosopher's Game because during his play, The Tempest, which was written somewhere either between 1610 and 1611 because it was first performed in November of 1611, in that play around that time, the philosopher of that play, Prospero, is directed in the stage directions to discover Ferdinand and Miranda playing at chess, and playing at chess is very specifically written out in the stage directions. And Prospero, a theme of that play is a philosopher playing a game. So it seems pretty directly referential to the Philosopher's Game. And Moyer's book, called The Philosopher's Game, details what she calls the Elizabethan Rule book for how to play the Philosopher's Game. And she says it's also known as Rithmomachia, which is called the Battle of Numbers. And this combined gaming with mathematical study and moral education. Now, her book is pretty expensive. It was like $80 on the used list that I saw on Amazon. I will link to that below this video, and I'm going to use an affiliate link when I link to the book below this video, but you can search it on Amazon if you don't want to support the show, and you can click below if you do, but that's Anne Moyer, M-O-Y-E-E-R, and her book is called The Philosopher's Game, Rithmomachia in Medieval and Renaissance Europe. And it actually continues on. It's like the world's longest title. And maybe they charge per letter of title is why she was able to charge that much. I don't know. But it's actually a really interesting book. And it details specifically what she calls Elizabethan rules for this. So at least during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, and apparently for the life of William Shakespeare, this was a popular way to play the game. Now, the Tempest is not the only place that chess shows up for William Shakespeare. In Henry VI, Henry is described as, quote, warlike mate. And while the word mate by itself isn't enough to suggest Shakespeare was punning on chess terminology, the idea that the pieces of a chessboard, like a queen, knights, bishop, we're all chasing after the other person's queen, knights, and bishops, sounds a lot like warfare, especially warfare during the life of Henry VI, where you really would have this person's king, queen, and knights attacking someone else's king, queens, and knights. So it was a lot like a battlefield. It would make sense for the word to overlap for Shakespeare in that way. Interestingly, in Henry VI, Part 1, Act 1, Scene 2, where this phrase is used, it is spoken by Jean la Pucelle, which is Shakespeare's characterization of Joan of Arc. In King Lear, Shakespeare uses the word mate again when Lear speaks the line one self-mate. Now, the modern dictionary describes self-mate as, in fact, a chess term. It means a problem in which the solver's task is to force the opponent to deliver a checkmate. It's basically when you are giving up by forcing the other person to win. Like, you want to lose, and so you play the game where they have no choice but to beat you. And that definitely seems applicable when you think about the themes in King Lear, where he does seem to be forcing others to inflict his madness. And Harold James Ruthven Murray, in his book, The History of Chess, says on page 651 that self-mate was a European innovation dating to the Anglo-Saxons. So it's possible this move, specifically the self-mate, was not only very old, but even before Shakespeare, but also very English at that. So there's obviously a lot of gaming language happening in King Lear on Shakespeare's part. Now, Shakespeare uses the word mate another time in A Comedy of Errors, and he says not mad but mated. And then in King John, Queen Eleanor says, "Thou mayest be a queen and check the world." She's accusing Constance of wanting Arthur to be king for her own devices. But that idea of a queen being able to check others definitely seems like a chess reference to me. King John further contains another chess reference where it's quoted to lie like pawns locked up. And in The Taming of the Shrew, Catherine says, "I pray you, sir, it is your will to make a stale of me amongst these mates." It seems, in short, that Shakespeare, if he was not an avid chess player himself, he was extremely knowledgeable about the game. And he felt his audience was well enough acquainted to catch these references from the stage as well. And some of them are very subtle. You would have had to have been familiar with the rules of the game or to have played it yourself to catch up on all of these. And a study of England during this time suggests that chess was very popular, would have been widely played. Chess in Elizabethan England would have been enjoyed by a wide variety of people, from the poorest all the way up to Queen Elizabeth herself is said to have loved playing the game of chess. Now, for Tudor England, to even take this a step further, chess playing was considered an essential social skill. The inventory of stuff belonging to Catherine of Aragon that was taken after she was banished from the court in 1531 revealed 2 chessboards with pieces, and her set was particularly red and ivory chessmen, and all of this was commandeered by Henry VIII. Catherine Parr, Mary Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth I are also known to have played chess, and the game was so much a part of court life that Henry VIII's accounts actually show a payment that he made to a cook to create 2 chessboards and have little men made of sugar and decorated with gold for a banquet that the king held. Now, I will go ahead and show you the transcript of the rules for how to play the Philosopher's Game that I found. And it was printed in London by James Robotham, and I'm not at all sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the instructions say that you basically take 2 chessboards and put them together. There's something like 48 pieces that it takes to play this game. And it's just, steeped in mathematics. You have double, quadruple, sextuple, octuple, quintuple, septuple, nonuple. Like, these are all, I'm reading from this list, and they use phrases like super particular proportion is when a greater number containeth a lesser one with a part of it. Anyway, lots of math, lots of fractions, first order of squares, and then you've got the kings and placement, and it's all a giant math problem. And in order, you've got triangles and equality. If you teach calculus or algebra, this would actually be a great game to play in your math class. You've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, but there's a reason it's called the Philosopher's Game. And it's further steeped in history because of Pythagoras. Pythagoras was known to be a philosopher, and he described the world around him using numbers. So there's a relationship of the Philosopher's Game to Pythagoras and numerology and his theories, which Shakespeare was reading and applying in his plays as well. There's been a lot of papers written about numerology in Shakespeare's plays. I wrote one for my undergraduate paper, my senior paper to graduate. I wrote about the calculus in Shakespeare's plays and the idea of the four humors and the tetrad and how all of these numbers make statements for Shakespeare's plays, because that was how the Elizabethan world during Shakespeare's lifetime described what was going on around them. They used numbers and philosophy. It was very Renaissance-based thought process happening in and around William Shakespeare. And these things show up in his plays. Now, because the game is pretty complicated, and I'm not kidding when I say there's addition, subtraction, multiplication, proportions, division, fractions, taking the square, triangles, and not to mention 2 big chessboards worth of players and instructions to filter through. The demonstration for how to play this game will be next week. We're going to split this video up into 2 parts. Today is the history of the Philosopher's Game as it relates to William Shakespeare. And next week, come back, hit like and subscribe on the channel, and you will be able to see a demonstration of how you can play this game. And I'll also put together an ebook for you that will have printable instructions so you can use this in your classroom or with your family. And links to all of that, as well as the research I did to put this together, are in the show notes below. So hit like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next Saturday, and don't forget to check below for the show notes. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.